Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to do a brake bleed on a 100 series Toyota Land Cruiser or an LX470. You can see here I'm using this OEM Tools one-man brake bleeder kit. Makes it super easy. You can do it by yourself. You don't need a friend to help you out. You can see here I'm using some needle nose pliers to get that hose a little bit opened up so I can fit around the brake bleeder valve. You want to do a brake bleed anytime you get air into the system. So like if you're doing a brake job and replacing the calipers, you're going to get air in there, so you want to do a brake bleed to get that air out. Or if you just want to get the old fluid that may have contaminants in it, get some of that old fluid out of your caliper, you can do a brake bleed as well, and then put some new fresh fluid back into the reservoir. So the order you want to follow for bleeding the brakes, the manufacturer, and it's been common practice for years, to start with the caliper furthest from the master cylinder and then work your way to the closest. So in the Land Cruiser, master cylinder is on the left side of the engine bay or the driver's side. And so you want to start with the right rear, then the left rear, then the right front, then the left front. This is so that as air is getting pushed out of the system, if you start with the front first, when you go to bleed the rears, you could accidentally get air into the front ones again. So you don't want to do that. Some people nowadays say it's not important and you don't need to worry about it, as modern systems have 4 lines going to each brake line. But my thought is you have to follow some sort of order, so why not just stick with what's always worked and what the manufacturer recommends. Now, you do want to make sure your banjo bolt is properly tightened down all the way. When I did it the first time, I tightened it up, but not enough. So I'll show you what happened here in a second. We'll go ahead and take a wrench like you see here and just loosen that bleeder valve up a little bit to allow some brake fluid to come out. Like I mentioned, if you don't do it right, when you go to bleed it out, you can see some brake fluid squirted out of the banjo bolt here. So make sure you have it tightened up. But when we're starting up here, what we want to do is put the key in the ignition, turn it to the ignition portion. You'll come out here and you can actually hear the brake system go and get pressurized and pushing some of that fluid in to get pressurized throughout the brake system. You don't want to let that level get below the minimum line though, as you could damage the system. So we'll go ahead and shut it off, and we'll go ahead and put some new fresh brake fluid in, and we'll top it off. That way we can start doing our brake bleed and not worry about getting too low. Now that our reservoir is topped off with fresh brake fluid, we'll go ahead and hit our brake pedal here a few times, and we'll see if some brake fluid came out into our bleeder bottle. You can see here a little bit came out into the hose, but none got into the bottle. That's because although we did loosen the bleeder valve, we didn't loosen it enough. So we'll give it just a very small turn here. It doesn't take much. Might take you a few times to try this. I'll go ahead and turn it, and we'll give it 2 long pushes to see if we get some fluid to come out now. And we'll go ahead and check here, and we can see about 1/3 of the bottle is filled up, so we are getting some brake fluid to come out. Now we'll go ahead and turn our key back onto the ignition, and we will let some more brake fluid come into the system. You can hear it now. All that's happening here is the brake fluid is being pulled out of the reservoir and brought into the brake system and into the line so we can bleed it out. Go ahead and turn the key off. Give it a few more pumps on the brake pedal to get some more fluid. Now we don't want to fill the bleeder bottle all the way up because it'll squirt out the top of the bottle, cause a mess. So be careful not to get it all the way full or over full. But once we get it full enough, we'll go ahead and close off that bleeder valve. And now how do we drain it out? It's actually pretty easy. Just go ahead and take the hose off. Leave your bottle attached to the vehicle, you can see here, and then we'll take our hose off, and actually the fluid will just drain by gravity out of the bottle, up into the tube, and out into another, we have another bottle here to store the rest of the brake fluid, so we can leave that bottle up on the vehicle. You can see this bleeder bottle is pretty small. You're not going to get too much brake fluid in there, so we will just keep draining it out into a larger bottle. That way we can get all the brake fluid out and leave that bleeder bottle up against the vehicle without taking it apart. Once we have all the fluid out of the bleeder bottle, we'll just go ahead and put our hose back on to the bleeder valve, and we'll go ahead and loosen that valve up again, making sure we get it opened up enough so the brake fluid will be able to come out. And once we do that, we'll just bleed it again. And you want to keep doing this process until you get all the fluid that you want out if it's dirty, or you just want to keep an eye on it to make sure there's no air bubbles in the hose itself as you're bleeding it. That'll be an indication that you got all the air out of the system. But brake fluid's pretty cheap, so I wouldn't cut it short with this and only put a little bit. I would just do it enough to make sure you're comfortable with it. You don't want to mess up your brake system. You don't want to get air in there and cause problems with your brake system. But once you do it enough, go ahead and tighten up the bleeder valve. We can drain it out again. You can see here. You can be careful. I almost spilled some fluid all over the ground. But again here, it's super easy to drain out. Super easy to do this just by yourself. I was able to do it while I was filming. Done. Once you're done all the bleeding, go ahead and fill up the reservoir with some brand new fresh brake fluid up to that maximum line. You want to do a brake bleed anytime you get air into the system if you're replacing calipers, or if the fluid's just been in there a while. You want to get the old fluid out and get new fluid in. You can see how dirty the fluid is if you leave it in there too long like this with all the contaminants. But thanks for watching today, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video.